I know, I know. Even in Southern California, there are days when it is not going to be possible for me to get away with a Hawaiian print shirt. So today is one of those days, Larry. I'm out and about all day today, and it's chilly out here in Riverside. So
One of the very few days of the year that's chilly.
that's right. Well, all right, Larry, we all know that the long game. Oh, before I do this right now, I actually wanted to do something today. We don't introduce you on this channel because everybody knows who you are, except that there's always new people and they might be going, who is this Larry guy? You keep having him on, but we don't know who he is. So let me see if I got it right. Larry is an entrepreneur who has owned companies on 4 continents. We just had 4 continents, right? Yeah, 4 continents. Several of those have been very large. One in particular got extremely big, thousands of employees. And you've also been a resident on multiple continents, going kind of not quite the same as Elon, but starting in South Africa, going through London instead of Canada, and ending up on our shores. How long ago?
81, I arrived on our shores.
81. That was the year I started my manufacturing business. So there you go. I won't forget that.
I did come to school here in 63, 64. I did my last year of high school in Scarsdale, New York.
There you go. That's right. I remembered that. Okay, so that gives you some idea. Oh, and Larry is also the co-author of the book on
decision management.
Decision trees, decision analysis. Yeah.
Decision management.
Management. Okay, decision management. All right, and your product over the years has been the sale of software to various kinds of entities. All right, so now everybody knows who you are, and that's going to matter here as we get down through this through our program today. All right, so the long game on Tesla is what really matters to most people. Most people are in it for the long game, and so we are supposed to just ignore these crazy ups and downs and all this kind of stuff. But because the fundamentals are there and the options that we have for things are just amazing, coming in future years. But even those who have no intention of selling and probably going to buy more Tesla stock, we're still subject, not just all those other people, but I'm still subject to the emotional trials from day to day. So I have a series of possible reasons for the huge downward pressure on Tesla. You've seen my reasons. Do you want to start out by offering any reasons that I don't have on my list?
Well, for today, the Hertz announcement was proximate. The sale by Hertz of 20% of their EV fleet due to the higher costs that they're sustaining. I watched the video of their CEO on CNBC today, and he was actually fairly confident that the problems were Hertz's rather than Tesla's.
Right.
He felt that, people needed to learn to drive EVs, and that, clearly Hertz hasn't done very much by way of educating people about how to drive an EV, what to do in driving an EV, and so on. So I think that is part of it. I think for sure that the Hertz announcement didn't do any good.
Right. So Larry, let me just stop you right there, because if anybody in our group, including you, has the ear of somebody that can listen to this suggestion, I think that Tesla should develop a 10-minute introductory video that when anybody enters the car with a phone that has not yet ever been in that car before, it just asks the question, are you a confident, normal, are you familiar with Tesla? And if you say yes, then great, that's the end of the story. If you say no, then there's an offer of a 10-minute presentation that just walks the person through all the obvious things. What do you think?
Randy, Hertz could do that today.
Yeah.
Today, Hertz could add an app or add a website to their Tesla, set it up so that when the customer gets in the car, it's on the screen.
Right.
Saying, are you new to Tesla, are you new to EVs? Touch the button, and it gives you the option to look at the video. There's no doubt that that's a possibility. By the way, Hertz also said, the CEO of Hertz also said that their business of renting cars to Uber is going very well.
Yes.
So that gives you the sort of indication. See, it's my thesis that Hertz and Uber would be ideal partners for Tesla in a robotaxi world.
Right.
Amongst other solutions for the robotaxi. I'm sure Tesla will, in specific areas, operate robotaxis themselves, but I think for a global rollout, certainly for a US-wide rollout, the solution would be Hertz and Uber. Other countries and other continents could be somewhat different, but I think those kinds of partnerships are very important. But you know, the gentleman from Hertz showed a real cognizance that they have work to do.
Right.
And we can definitely offer them solutions and work with them and you know, help give them suggestions. And I think we would definitely do that. But it's Hertz's responsibility, not so much Tesla's responsibility, is my point.
Yeah. All right. So that was a specific thing that I think we can all agree didn't help the market. Of course, the downward price in China, the price drops in China had to be have impact also. You know, Larry, those price cuts, that has already been on people's mind. I think they're already worried that Tesla will not hit the margin numbers again, maybe even miss the ones that the street has out there. And this would just exacerbate that problem. This would just make people even more worried. Do you think that was a piece of what's going on out there?
Undoubtedly, it's a piece of it. You know, here's the reality. The auto industry is used to applying its pricing policies through its dealers.
Right.
And the reality is Tesla, because it sells directly, its pricing strategies are exposed to the public in a way that's the public is not used to, and certainly the press is not used to.
Right.
So these day-to-day movements, now there's no doubt that last year they brought the prices down of both the Y and the 3, and I thought it was strategic.
Right.
But unfortunately, it doesn't come across that way. It doesn't appear that way. And Tesla doesn't do, as we've talked about before, any publicity or advertising that we feel would help the situation. But, you know, the average auto manufacturer controls its pricing through its dealers, which is completely different to the MSRP. And this is a very discrete, clear program that they run in a formal way on a day-to-day, month-to-month basis. So now, as to today's announcement, you know, you only have to read Gary Black,
yes,
on X, to see what the analysts and how the people are going to react. And so this pricing thing is a really big deal with them. We have no idea of their cost structures as they move from time to time. And we're told by our own experts, and we have experts amongst us, that actually prices, supply chain costs have dropped quite dramatically. However, I've spoken about this before, but a piece of really bad news is that Giga Berlin is closing down for 2 weeks because the shipping has been routed around the Cape. This is a big deal. Shipping costs have suddenly started to rise again. There's a long delay around the Cape. I know, they lost several thousand sales as a result. We don't know how many thousand, but there were several thousand sales they lost in the last quarter due to the trip around the Cape. And so that's a negative impact on them, despite the fact that, Jeff Lutz has told us that there are a lot of positives coming through the pipeline and that they're experiencing right now.
Right. So
I am not as worried about the price cuts. I think Tesla's pricing has been spot on. They targeted 1.8 million sales. They hit 1.8 million sales almost on the nose. And I think a lot of that had to do with their sense of what the pricing was and what they needed to do. We still don't know what the margins are as a result of that.
Right.
You know, we're hoping that they're better, and, you know, some people are saying they're worse. We'll see. But yeah, in terms of today's stock price, the pricing movement in China really impacted people. But the truth of the matter is that the discounts that they were giving last year really are kind of offset by this price. And if this price is just simply to formalize what were discounts that they were giving last year, then there's no real movement in the price.
Right.
So we'll see. Time will tell.
So now the flip side of that, as you mentioned, is the question of what is, in fact, their numbers going to be in 2024 in terms of shipments. And I think the street is also worried, and probably, you know, retail investors too, that Tesla will guide in the 2.1 to 2.2 area, which would not justify the current PE going forward. So if your margins are at 17% and you're only growing your auto sales at 35 or 30 or 25%, then all of a sudden you can't justify a 65 PE. And that would also be another situation where the price cut in China would say, oh, they can't even sell the ones they got. How can they expand in China? Now, I will answer part of that argument that I don't think that China is where they need the growth next year. They need to grow, but it could be, in fact, 25% in China because they don't have that much capacity in China. The growth needs to be in the United States. That's where the potential is for the
And Europe. And Europe.
Europe, but it's not even as big in Europe as it is in the US.
Don't forget that to hit 2.4 million, we need at least 1.1 million out of China.
Right.
Some of those cars will go to Europe. Some of those cars will go to Asia. Some of those cars will go to Canada. But we still need that factory to produce 1.1 million.
Right.
And maybe a little bit more, maybe even 1.15 million. So it's imperative that we get that volume out of that factory, even at the cost of a point or two.
Right.
A point or two would not be a bad thing because we have huge operating leverage.
Right.
By that, I mean our fixed costs, our overhead costs are relatively low in this company. In fact, they are extraordinarily low.
Right. Right.
So even if our margin compresses a little bit, as long as our revenue is up, the actual bottom line, the operating margin that Zach Kirk spoke to us about is very important.
Yeah. But I think we can agree that the street is looking at those two components and very worried about those two components coming up next week. So then there's just the third reason that I stated was just plain fatigue from all the negative press, and then not seeing the analysts even talk about such things that are positive, like the Cybertruck reviews, nothing on those. The Optimus video, the Model 3 Plus review, release. And with all the negative news, and then we have these three positive catalyst items, and yet no mainstream coverage of it. It just seems like maybe some people would be getting fatigued, and maybe they're starting to pull back, trim off a little bit of what they're doing in Tesla, stick it over in NVIDIA or in, possibly in Bitcoin, which there's a little more excitement right now.
That's true. I mean, I even saw, one of the longtime Tesla bulls who heads up growth, some form of managed account. Anyway, he tweeted today that he thinks a lot of the retail investors are getting getting Elon fatigue from all of Elon's tweetings. This reminds me so much of 2017, doesn't it? I mean, don't you get that 2017 feeling? Oh my God, what's what more can go wrong? What more can go wrong? These are opportunities. These are times of opportunity. I said at the beginning of this year, it's going to be a great year for Tesla. Yes. But it's going to be a greater opportunity for Tesla investors, because I think that the early part of the year is going to have a lot of this negativity around it. It feels like, it tastes like, it sniffs like 2017.
So then my fourth thought, which was similar but kind of different, is that stocks can get a mind of their own. They can get
Yes.
almost like a football team. They can have a momentum. And right now the momentum is down, and it takes something pretty significant to stop the momentum. Eventually, of course, you get to the place where it's a bargain and a bunch of smart people start buying it. But where is that number? I would have thought it was hit today. I was expecting a bounce after it went down yet again today. But what do you think? How much of this at this point do you think is just momentum?
I think that the negative news is really controlling right now, just the quantum of it and the tone of it. Think about that terrible article, in the Wall Street Journal. I mean, a shocking article in the Wall Street Journal. NASA even came out with a statement that, they're comfortable that nobody at SpaceX, that there's no drug issues at SpaceX. I mean, they couldn't have come out with a clearer endorsement and, of Elon Musk and his company. They could not have.
Right. Yeah. And yet the story continues to play today as if nothing happened.
As if nothing had
A week
happened.
later, it's still playing with headlines.
And you know what really irks me? It irks me no end. That Boeing endangers thousands of people's lives because of their complete lack of management and complete, just not showing up.
Yeah.
And,
Again.
nobody, I mean, it's like, nobody takes any note, where's the Wall Street Journal? I mean, this company is putting the United States at risk. The United States is going to have to take over this company and decompose it and put it under a completely new management. That's what's going to have to happen. Anyway, I should get off my rant about Boeing.
Maybe they should call Elon.
That thought occurred to me, but I don't want them to do that. I don't want them to even think about it. But Boeing was supposed to beat Elon to space.
Right.
I mean, Boeing are so dysfunctional. They are so dysfunctional now that I think the United States has to put an administrator in, put it under some kind of management, and then break the pieces up, but not merge the pieces with any existing armaments or, manufacturer, but really put, good man. Anyway, I get off the rant.
Okay.
Let's get back to Tesla. Yes.
All right.
The news has not been kind. The news, the media, the classical media has not been kind to Elon. And, that's the frustration that a lot of Tesla semi or institutional investors feel, that they're uncomfortable with Elon in this public persona mode,
Well, this is Good News Friday. So on the positive side, we have a pretty cool setup in 2024 that includes major new products coming on stream. And we've got news today that the Model 3 Plus, they're already pushing out the dates for delivery on those. We have huge probable increases in energy profits, which you just talked about. We have massive IRA payments coming from 4680 production. I'm assuming they will hit their 100 gigawatts, but even if they come close, it's going to be in the billions and billions of dollars. And then we have the growing AI potential in Dojo, Optimus, and FSD. That's a pretty good setup for 2024.
Amazing setup for 2024. Not to mention, we have a huge amount of we have Lathrop, that has doubled, and you talked about the energy, but China.
Right.
That factory's, we're going to see pictures imminently of that factory rising, the pack factory, mega pack factory rising. Right. And then, we're going to start seeing pictures of ground being prepared in Mexico, and ground has already begun being prepared in Nevada. So there's just, a lot of good stuff happening. And we haven't heard about battery production for a while. But from the tea leaves that I read, I think it's going very well.
Good. Yeah, I think so too. I think quite frankly, well, maybe we'll find out more a week from Wednesday. So let's take a look at something that is right up your channel. All right. Bloomberg is reporting popular AI chatbots from OpenAI, Google, and Meta platforms are prone to hallucinations when answering legal questions. Well, they're prone to hallucinations when answering all questions, posing special risks for people who use the technology because they can't afford a lawyer. That's Stanford University research. They say large language models hallucinate at least 75% of the time when answering questions about a court ruling. That's the easiest thing. Well, I spent 3 years at UCLA Law, so it isn't easy, but it should be easier than 75%. I did better than that, Larry. And so they've tested more than 200,000 legal questions on OpenAI's ChatGPT and on Google's Palm and on Meta's Llama and general purpose models not built for specific legal use. Larry, I've heard people make the argument that Tesla is likely far ahead of the GPT crowd with their FSD learning methodologies. It can't be making errors anywhere close to the 75% level or even the 1% level in order to be able to be sent out even to the 15,000 employees that are driving it now.
Look, the problem is much more serious than you raised.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. You're now in my courtroom because my focus, my business, my expertise was in decision management. And in decision management, we make determinative decisions. We make determinative findings based upon fact.
Right. And
it's highly predictable, extraordinarily predictable, and we can give you absolutely precise traceability to the causes of the solution, of the decision.
Right.
LLMs, it is not possible currently with our technology today, it is not possible to do that, period.
Right.
That is the nature of large language models. So the fact is that they all depend upon, just simply the next best word. And the next best word is not based upon a determinative logic. It's based upon, the probability algorithm, the probability factor that is produced by the neural net.
Plus the training on top of that helps.
No, the training causes the probability. The training is the basis of the probability.
Okay.
They don't assign a probability and then train it. What they do is that the probability emerges from the training.
I see.
It's not a direct, there's not a probability percentage. The probability is the result of how the net functions, of how the neural net functions, and the relationships it creates, or the associations, I should say, it creates. So it is not possible to determine whether the answer is accurate factually using the software that created the answer, and B, why it came up with that answer.
Right.
It just gives you the answer, and it sounds darn sure of itself. So, there are two problems with large language. Well, not two problems. There's one problem with large language models, and that is it does hallucinate. It always hallucinates. Sometimes its hallucinations are accurate.
Right.
Sometimes they're not accurate, but it's basically a hallucination machine. That would be a very apt way to describe it.
Right.
Now, when we get to Tesla's FSD, it is equally probabilistic. Okay. The only non-probabilistic code in version 11 plus is the code that actually steers the wheel or changes the puts the signal on, or, blinks the light, whatever it does, that function is driven by code, and that's going away now. That function is actually being driven by the probabilistic machine. It's multiple neural nets cascading one to the other. So there's a high level of probability. Here's the big issue. Here's the big value statement. There is a direct way to test the accuracy of its probability, of its probabilistic outcome.
Right.
And that is if it stays on the road, if it does the right thing.
Yeah.
That test is permanently with it. And so the ability to train it to come to accurate solutions is kind of built into the whole FSD feedback process.
Right.
Now, LLMs are developing solutions to the problem, and they're kind of similar to that in a way. They're called, experts. So
yeah,
experts, are subnets, if you wish. It's not really a subnet, but the notion is that there's a component of the net that is trained on some very, very specific material.
Right.
And that material results in a kind of solution of its own. And then you can have multiple different experts training on material of that subject. And you can poll those experts. You can poll the net for those that those experts produce and see which ones agree with each other. And you can say, well, there may be hallucinations, but if those three nets that are trained on that subject matter say this and agree, then there's a much higher probability of being accurate. And I'm giving a very simplistic explanation, but it's kind of what it does.
Right.
And so that's the way, these LLMs, and they're no longer LLMs because there's a whole lot of superstructure on top of them, but that's the way they're perfecting their problem. And this is kind of the roadmap. This kind of points to a roadmap for the future. And so if you look at FSD is much, much, much more rigorous than the LLMs. And, in a way, you could say their problem is much more constrained.
Right.
And when you're training to a constrained problem, then you're going to get higher levels of probability that when you're training to this incredibly broad problem.
Yes.
And by the way, this is the problem of the bot is going to have. This is exactly the problem the bot's going to have. And that's why I am so focused on the cost of managing the bot in the factory, because I don't think it's going to be as simple as you guys think it's going to be. I think we're going to have very similar kinds of problems, and there's going to have to be a whole management structure over the bots. And that is a business in and of itself. I believe Tesla will support that, and I've built that into my cost structure. But that's an aside.
Okay, all right.
But the answer to your question is, your instinct, I believe, is correct for all those reasons. And I hope I haven't spent too much of your time.
No, not at all. I think that will be very, very valuable to a lot of folks that are listening right now. So, what I promised them, in addition, I promised them this morning that you would give us your take on the economy and the markets going forward after the okay CPI, the good PPI, and the disastrous bank earnings. So I've already told this crowd that I'm 50% thinking recession happens in the third quarter. I think you and I might have discussed that on Monday, but I'm wondering, since Monday, how have all of these fairly substantial news developments impacted what you're thinking about the timing and or the severity and or et cetera? So what's on your mind?
If the Federal Reserve stands pat, as it's predicted to stand pat at the next meeting, I think we're almost certainly going to have a recession.
So Larry, I don't know if you saw today, it bounced back up again. It is now a 79% chance
Chance of March.
of March, right? And they're up to 7 every single meeting, dropping a quarter point. That is the current Kobesi letter is was out a little while ago, who does a great job on the data. And that's what he's currently showing.
Well, I've got the Fed Watch tool up, and we can look at that. But regardless, I think we are skirting very close to a recession. We are having a recession in many parts of the economy already. That's not the classical definition of the recession, but of course, the classical definition of the recession has been thrown out by the Federal Reserve itself. And
Anyway.
so they redefined the last recession as not a recession, or the beginning of this recession, not a recession. So I think the third quarter may even be late. I think we may even have a recession earlier. I mean, look, sentiment is not great.
Yeah.
Sentiment is, and that has a lot to do with the recession. So just as you are a little disheartened by all you hear and see around you, there's a lot others that are much more disheartened, because you're actually a guy with a lot of optimism. You look to the bright side. And so, I think that there is a real opportunity, a real threat of a potential recession.
Yeah. Okay. Well, like I said, I have started to like Bank of America puts out a report. I think this will come out not next week, maybe the following week, about the same time or maybe it is next week. Anyway, they take a look at the first earnings reports that come out, and they've got an algo that they put on that, the first 50 or whatever it is from the S&P. And that's been really predictive of how the entire earnings period is going to play out. Now, that won't give us anything about the guidance that's going to come out, which I think is potentially even more important than the actual earnings, but at least it gives an indication of the earnings. So I'm going to be watching that very carefully. If I forget to do that, Larry, you'll have to remind me, okay?
Okay, I got it.
But the banks started out today not great. I mean, that was, I think, caught everybody by surprise.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, and the banks are, you think the banks would be the last to get hurt in a recession, but they're leading off.
Well, banks really don't do well in a recession.
Right.
So I think, that it's not determinative. But look, Mayor Thacker has been saying for some time that we're going to have a recession, and he's given some fairly clear, reasons and indications. He's pretty solid, that guy. And so, and I've been saying it for a while. But, time will tell. Time will tell.
Time will tell. All right. Well, let's look at the numbers, Larry, just real quick. So we got Tesla's down another $0.50 in the after hours. That doesn't take it down to the bottom number for the day, which was 217.15 was the bottom number today. And it's now sitting at 218.40. Long weekend, so much can happen over 3 days. I'm guessing that a lot of folks did not want to be exposed over this long weekend. So that's probably why we ended up at the low point. Any last thoughts on Tesla specifically, Larry?
Great buying opportunity upcoming, not investment advice, but I think we're going to see a further decline, particularly around earnings. And, I'm just accumulating. These are great times to average down your cost of Tesla.
Yeah, it comes down to your personal sentiment. How much do you believe the story? If you believe it, if you think it's going to be what many of us do think it's going to be, like you say, a great time to accumulate. Mm-hmm. Well, bonds have been the leading indicator. They have been the story for months and months and months. So let's see what all the impact was on bonds. So we're back under the 4s again. at 3939. We're nowhere close to the low, but it was down in the regular trading, and now it is, oh no, this is not, I'm sorry, this is the regular trading. So, because there's no pre-market, of course, on Friday. So we're at 3939. Based on the banks, my first thought, the first thing that hit me when we were looking at that and the PPI reading was we're going to break that 373. We're going to be looking at a 3.5 here, not in the not too distant future. That's not investment advice.
Yeah. It was a great play. It was a great play, the bond play. Wow.
Yeah, okay.
And it was called, it was called by all the best market leaders.
Oh yeah, I called it. Oh yeah, Larry, it's okay. You can say it. It's all right. The great market leaders. I knew you were talking about me. I knew that's what you meant. So let's see here. We've got oil, of course, being battered by the entire Red Sea issue, but not surprisingly necessarily. But oil is basically still sitting at 72.76 on the Texas Intermediate. And I did some research on that this week, Larry, and there is just massive amounts of oil sitting there and massive amounts of capacity.
Normally if there's a Red Sea crisis or a crisis in the Gulf, oil should shoot up.
Right.
The fact that it's hardly budged is an indicator of just how bad the world economy really is.
And that there's
China really is.
Yeah. And that there's just a lot of it sitting in storage right now. Natural gas, Larry. Somebody should have predicted this. If I'm such a great market leader, I should have said buy natural gas. 7.5% today, Larry, on the upside. 7 in one day.
Well, cold winter.
I guess, I don't know. I think it's out of control because it's going up 5 and down 5 and up 4 and now up 7 and then down. And it's always ending up in the same place, but it's just flying all around. So I don't know. I can't find anybody to tell me why there's this much crazy volatility in natural gas right now.
Gold market, I understand.
Yeah. Gold up 1.7. That's obviously, anybody could have guessed that today. Copper down, Larry, sitting at 3.7.
Yeah, well, copper's been, copper's the canary in the coal mine. It's the commodity with a PhD. It knows that a recession is coming.
I didn't hear anybody calling this one, Larry. Bitcoin down 4,000 today. That's down 8.6%.
At 4,000, I thought it was 3. I thought it came up a little bit at the end, but okay.
No, there's no end, Larry. It just continues to trade.
4,000, you're right. You're right. 8.5.
Actually, over 4,000 now, 4,00010. Yeah, so that's quite the drop.
They're on the news.
Sell on the news. Boy, that got new meaning. All right, let's look at the oh, that's right. No pre-market. Never mind. I can't tell you what's happening.
And here's a question for you.
Yes.
Do you see it going down further next week?
The Bitcoin? I don't have a clue, Larry. I know this much about Bitcoin, and I've started, of course, since I follow it every single day in terms of movement, you can start to get the normal kinds of, okay, you get it out here or you get down there, it gets outside of its skis, but in terms of understanding fundamentally, which is my basis for everything, I'm 90% fundamental on everything, maybe 10% technical. So I don't understand the fundamentals. So I don't know how to even guess.
Well, here's a fact of life. Bitcoin halving is due anytime soon. I forget when.
May, I think. May.
Yeah, anytime soon. So May. I find it very difficult to believe that we're not going to see a significant secular rise in the price of Bitcoin. Every time they've halved, there's been a secular rise. I could be wrong, but I mean, I think it bears looking at.
Yeah, okay. Well, there you go. I will listen to you because I know absolutely nothing. I mean, I listen to you all the time, Larry. But I mean, in this case, I have to listen to you without my normal, retort.
In this quarter's earnings report, Tesla is going to have to write up its Bitcoin.
Oh, yeah. Right. Up. Yeah, they made money. Oh, that's right. How about that?
Which is kind of good news, bad news, because they're going to write it up, but every quarter now it's going to fluctuate backwards and forth because there's a new, they've said no longer you mark it down as a commodity, you now treat it as a security. So
Oh, really? Okay.
yeah, a
Oh,
big change in how they treat Bitcoin. So that's going to change. You can expect to see a couple of 100 million on the bottom line come through from Bitcoin for one-off income. But I wouldn't hold my breath because I think it's going to be very, very. It's going to fluctuate. Yeah.
Yeah, well, so we're getting to the point where there's going to be more dollars involved in Tesla's asterisks than there is in the net automotive business, between all the smaller divisions and then all of the IRA income and the what do you call it?
I don't think they break out the IRA.
No, but they should. I think they gave us a little note. I believe there should be a note that says specifically, this is the amount of IRA discounting, or however you want to put it, incentives that we received, even though it ends up going into cost of goods. I think that would be a good note. I think we should see that note.
Yeah, it goes into gross profit. Yeah, I don't. Oh, you mean it goes in as a negative growth? Yeah. Right. Sorry, you're right. Maybe.
Okay. It's another useful metric.
Better.
Yeah, it's a useful metric for an investor to know what percent, like for instance, let's say they hit 18% gross margins on cars. Well, what if 2% of that is IRA? I would want to know that, okay? Because if 2% of it's IRA and there's a change of government, and the new government says, this is ridiculous, we're not going to pay Tesla this much money, and we're gonna chop this, cut it, get rid of it, whatever. So I think it's an important metric. I think it's something we should be seeing.
You're right.
Oh, okay, all right. I'll end on that. I mean, we're always looking for good news. So on Good News Friday, I'm going to end on Larry saying,
I'm going to give you some good news.
Okay, all right.
Give you some good news.
All right.
I think we're coming to the end of the dominance of Apple.
No.
Yeah, I think everybody should research the Rabbit R1 device.
Okay.
I think it's going to change the world.
Wow. I saw it, but I didn't pay a lot of attention to it. But you think it's going to be a big...
Pay attention. Pay attention.
All right.
What Rabbit does is what we are going to have to do in computing in general. Even desktop computing is going to have to do this. Rabbit simply cuts out the middleman, cuts out Google, cuts out, the iPhone walled garden and goes directly to applications API.
Oh, yeah.
Directly calls the application. And so you can go to Rabbit and book a ticket, and you don't have to go through the whole Megillah of this website, then that website, to search on this one, go to this one. It's kind of like ChatGPT does for you, but you have to go to ChatGPT on the web, and then it will take you to a website there. Rabbit does all of that for you. So it's dramatically simpler. It does what Siri never was capable of doing, or Android Voice was never capable of doing. And it's a unique device. It's brilliantly engineered. It's going to change the world. And if you want good news, that is good news, because we may see an end to, Apple's dominance. We may see an end to Android's dominance. We may see the emergence of a much more useful experience in interfacing with computers, and this may well be how we will interface with robots in future.
All right. Well, Larry, let me just say one more thing to the audience out there, and that is another video that I'm going to just say they need to watch. And yes, it is one of mine. But earlier today, I put up a video with Brian Wang, where he and I discussed things about the Optimus robot that nobody has ever discussed. And I'm pretty sure I've seen it all. And Brian, of course, he's brilliant. And Brian has looked at it in a completely different way. And I want to encourage everybody. The numbers were already coming in extremely high. People were watching it at a very high rate. But if you haven't seen it yet, I just want to make sure everybody out there takes a look at that video. It is going to change your mind about what the future is with regard to the Optimus. And the card will be right there.
Right.
All right. Well, that's it, Larry. Until next week. And we'll say thank you, as always, for co-hosting on Good News Friday. And to all of you out there, it's been great talking to you.